Is this all defensive with old media? Is it off? Or is it somewhere between offensive and defensive?
That's a great question. As always, basically, I think the notion of direct to the consumer. Judge Leon's report in his first 50 pages covers that whole landscape as well as anyone could do. You don't have to read the other 100.
Only all judges were as good as this guy, I think.
And listen, he even quoted Bob Dylan. I mean, this is good. Independent of that, Joe, the notion of a compression. Think back 100 years ago when the Model T Ford in manufacturing, Jeff Bezos is doing the same thing, contracting. And what Judge Leon indicated was manufacturer, intermediary, retailer, consumer. You're going directly from the manufacturer to the consumer, direct to the consumer, and Netflix has demonstrated that that works. They have 120 million subscribers globally, and they're going to go to 140 million, and they'll go to 200 million in the next few years. That is a very powerful argument about where the money is going to be. But, you know, I wrote this in 1975 when I covered MCA. Give the consumer what they want, when they want it, and do it at a low cost. And what you're talking about is the compression of the cost structure for me, the consumer, to watch what I want, when I want, or whatever device.
It sounds like you're saying it's defensive then.
Not necessarily, because the free market system allows companies to come in and change their business model. Look at Walmart. They bought Jet. They anticipated what Bezos was going to do, in part when they bought Whole Foods. So you've got to adjust. You've got to make mistakes.
So this is good for AT&T. If Comcast buys stocks, it's good for Fox.
Well, that's a different issue. Then you go through the metrics. You know, you got 1.1 billion shares coming out today that are going to be issued by AT&T. They got to absorb that. They got a dividend coming up in about the first week of July. So you get a $0.50. How is the market going to absorb that? That's a different issue. What are they going to do about the debt? They have still a significant amount of relative capex relative to other companies, and they got to work their way through that. And then there's something different. Analysts are tough people to deal with. But think about talent. Think about individuals that. How do you deal with Tom Cruise? How do you deal? So they're going to have a learning curve.
Because you think that's going to be a culture issue for AT&T?
That's a good word.
Let me ask you a separate question just related to that. In terms of growing the HBO business, for example, to compete with a Netflix or the like, how much money more do you think they're going to be able to invest in some of these businesses to try to be competitive at a time when you're talking about the debt and the dividend and all these other issues? And that gets then back to the culture issue.
Yeah, but that's part of it. From the point of view, look, what happened with DirecTV, there are changes all the time in the consumer distribution habits. This was a good deal for AT&T. The wild cards are what is Verizon going to do? How do they put money into and green light what they want to show? And can they do it cost effectively? And you've had companies in the movie business forever coming up with $200 million duds. And I mentioned it the other day. Think about Ishtar. Think about World of, if you go back, Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, yes, they will put money in. They will have to greenlight projects. Somebody has to figure out what's going to work, anticipate what the consumer is going to do. How do you deliver it to them? How do you make it cost effective? And then you look globally, okay? And then how do you distribute to the eyeballs around the world? And there's 7.3 or 5 billion people. It's only 350 million in the U.S. Yeah.
Which media companies do you own?
I own a large, significant amount, but we have been concentrated on, obviously, Fox, and that's a large position. Then the Les Munvies and Bob Bacchus and Viacom, we own that. And then in addition to that, we own distribution companies on content. And then what we did, just to go back to Joe, we created an ETF on the pet parents, but we also created something called Media Mogul. So we track what John Malone is doing. We obviously track what Brian Roberts is doing. Then we track what is going on in that world.
You just said that AT&T, it's a good deal, except if you look at the price, basically. Like what has to happen
not necessarily. The price was fine. I mean, they picked up $50 a share in cash, $53.75 in cash times, the 800 million shares. So they picked up 40 billion of debt plus the 20 billion of debt. So they added 60 billion to debt. In addition to that, they had to issue stock based on the transaction last night and the number of shares they issued, which was below the collar. They issued approximately 1.1 billion shares on top of their base. So that is going to be absorbed by holders that don't want to own AT&T. They're going to be absorbed by ETFs that have to make adjustments.
So it's not the price, it's the structure?
No, it's just the short-term. I think it's work in progress. And Randall is coming on at 8:30, and he's going to have some interesting dynamics.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.